Time now for our news review. Well, let's begin with the Moscow Times. It's writing about Russian President Vladimir Putin, who will be speaking at the UN General Assembly on Monday, expected to focus on the conflict in Syria rather than what's been happening in the east of Ukraine.
Now let's move on to some of the other stories, and this is the French newspaper Le Figaro looking at the separatist parties who've won Catalonia's regional election, which they say in this article gives them a mandate to seek independence from Spain.
The Financial Times looking at how Saudi Arabia has withdrawn tens of billions of dollars of overseas funding in a bid to cut its own deficit because of falling oil prices.
Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg has announced plans with Microsoft to help bring the internet to refugee camps. This is with Bill Gates as well, who's pledged to make sure everyone in the world has access to the web by 2020. That's the front page of Gulf News.
China Daily has President Xi Jinping announcing his country is going to give the United Nations $10 million. The president was speaking at a high-level meeting to promote women's rights. It was a controversial appearance.
And people around the world have been watching, of course, the skies to observe that rare celestial event known as a supermoon eclipse. This is a Times which has a photo taken in Glastonbury in Britain.
Cornelia Meyer is here this morning, CEO of the business consultancy MRL Corporation.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's been over a year since they've met face to face, and whenever they meet, you can almost feel the tension in your TV screen when you're watching Obama and Putin. They don't seem to like each other, and that's important as well.
That's very important because, after all, we're all humans. Even if you run a country, you're human, and so that's very important. But I think here it's a case of needs must. Something just needs to happen in Syria. You have more than 50% of the population displaced. Imagine more than 50% of a country's population displaced. It's enormous. You have the huge refugee crisis hitting Europe. And I think that sort of woke up the Europeans that this is sort of in their backyard. So needs must. People need to start engaging on Syria. Russia has a part to play, and the reason Russia has sort of gone in there, more aggressively, putting in troops, putting in
planes.
Assets, planes, is we should not forget one thing. This is the last Mediterranean port that Russia has, and that is really Russia's interest there. And Russia used to have a lot of allies, especially in North Africa. Remember, under Gamal Abdel Nasser, Egypt was a firm ally, and even Mubarak, even if he didn't like the Russians, he was trained in Russia as a MiG fighter pilot. So there were always these contacts, and Russia has lost all connectivity into the Mediterranean. So to them, this is very strategic.
Is there any reason for the West to be overly concerned about Putin's strategies in Syria? Because there surely is the one thing that they can agree on is that Islamic State and its rising power is a massive, massive issue here. And Bashar al-Assad is one thing, but Islamic State is another.
Yeah, it's one thing, it's another. It's just sometimes when you have to fight an enemy, you have to have strange bedfellows. But Bashar al-Assad is not a nice man. And if you think of the barrel bombs and of the millions, of the thousands and thousands of people of his own people that he has killed, this is very bad. This is very bad. But Islamic State, at this point, I think there is a consensus that this is whom we have to fight.
And this situation, as the Moscow Times put it, gives Putin, who they say is taking centre stage at the UN, a reason to be there and have something important to say that's not about Ukraine.
Yeah, but then we should not forget one thing with the Iran negotiations, the Iran embargo nuclear deal. Russia had played a very important and a very constructive role in the P5+1 negotiations. So they have. Yes, we all have a problem with the Ukraine, but they have on certain other places and certain other issues one has been able to engage with them. But you're right, they don't like each other. Boy, they don't like each other.
Spain, the move on the part of Catalonia to get independence from the government, the national government in Spain. Are we a step closer or not? It's unclear.
It's unclear, but this seems to be the mood in Europe of the separatists. Remember the Scottish referendum. There's sort of a groundswelling. But you look at it.
But Catalonia has been going for a very long time.
For a very long time. But look at it. Yes, it is the most prosperous region. Yes, I wanted to say province. It's not a province. Region, but. It's 7.5 million. You could argue Switzerland is about 8 million, but they have a bigger economy. And in a country where you have youth unemployment of 50%, is this really your problem, or should you maybe focus on other things? But maybe I'm an economist, and I see the economy first always.
Mariano Rajoy, the Prime Minister, was asking the Catalans, look, who's going to pay your pensions if you become independent? But as you say, it's a really important economic region in Spain. It's something between 15 to 20% of Spain's entire economy, I think.
Yes.
So could it survive on its own economically?
I doubt that very much. I doubt that very much. And you know, we don't need a lot more smaller states. I think Spain needs to sort out its economic problems. So they should really all work together.
It is improving there, though, generally speaking.
Yes, it is.
Financial Times, a big part of its front page dedicated to Saudi Arabia withdrawing tens of billions of dollars from global asset managers. It's not a surprise that this is happening at all, is it? But it's quite big, the numbers.
Yeah, but it's in the face of you know, a lot of foreign reserves that they have. So
but
yes, it's a big number.
73
billion is a big number. Is a drop in foreign reserves. I think it constitutes less than a 10% drop. So we have to put it in perspective. But you know, if oil prices are that low and you have a budget that's that high and you have a war in Yemen at the same time that you have to fight, you can see why it happens. You know, there's another story sort of saying, well, Tehran is getting more from taxes than from oil for the first time, and there is some rationale in the Gulf region to start charging the population for some things. You know, water is free, electricity is free, which leads to wastage. So maybe there's a way of also domestically raising some more funds.
In Gulf News, a great story, if Mark Zuckerberg can pull it off and actually provide into... Yeah, is Bill Gates also involved in this? I must say, I've only seen the Zuckerberg thing in the headline here and seen it yesterday on the BBC website. If he can do this, because, you know what, a lot of these people may end up living in these refugee camps for decades. It's quite possible that it'll become their permanent place of residence.
It's absolutely possible. Look what happened to Palestinians. Look what happens with these waves of refugees. And I think it's great. What I really find is wonderful is that we finally see corporations engaging. There is so much human misery out there in these refugee camps. And yes, we saw governments, we saw a lot of people talking, but we didn't see anybody doing things. And we see corporations generously doing something, and that is good. And I hope that, you know, the fast-moving consumer goods companies and all of those companies that would have things that these refugees need will take a leaf of this script.
Right, China Daily, Xi pledges $10 million for the United Nations. This is specifically to enable women, about women's rights, etc. And yet he was quickly, I mean, China Daily is a state-sponsored newspaper. There's no detail in this article, but he was quickly criticised for this move.
Well, I think it's a good thing to... I mean, 10 million is, if you're China, is really nothing, but...
Doesn't go very far, does it?
Doesn't go very far. But he's doing something, and I think it's great to see leaders engaging and trying to help, you know, women in life, in the economy. People criticize China for their policies, but you look at it in Asia, China is probably one of the countries with the biggest female participation in the workforce, and where you can really go far as a woman. And you know, there are things that are not good. Nowhere everything is good, but China has by far not the worst record in Asia on women.
Interesting. I printed up a script from Thursday when McKinsey, the global consultancy firm, said that $12 trillion could be added to the global economy by 2025 if there was more gender equality in workplaces around the world.
Well, yes, let's get there.
Yes, absolutely. Did you see the moon tonight?
Yes, I did. I was so disappointed. It was a piddly little thing.
Come on.
I expected it to be big.
It was
red. But it was sold to us as this gigantic
thing. It depends
thing.
where you're looking at it. I think.
I looked at it
Above London, it does look a bit diddy.
I looked at it from my bedroom window, and I looked up, and I was like, "Well, that's not really." Well, it's red.
It's not
but
that
it's
super,
small.
you
It's not that super. I expected, you know, like supersize me.
Cornelia, thank you very much indeed for your
Thank
company
you.
this morning. Have a great week. In days gone by, they thought that this kind of supermoon event meant the end of days, but
Indeed.
we don't think that's
We're
the
still
case
here.
anymore.
Have a really good day.
We'll be back
See you
in a
soon.
few minutes.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.